إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث كلام الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. The news coming from Palestine these days are called on us to talk about this conflict, Palestine. In English, Palestine, but the name is Palestine. So let's talk about it. I think the news shows a good segment of the destruction and killing in Gaza. And Gaza, they call it, it's Gaza. But they don't show the true origin of the conflict or talk about it. That's their specialty. They just try to get ratings and whatever it is. For us, it's very important to explain and to talk about this conflict. Even Muslims don't really understand the conflict. I've been asked about it by people who have been Muslim for a number of years because they don't know. My name is Jalal Abualrub, Jalal Abualrub. I'm originally from Palestine, from the city of Jenin, which is in the West Bank. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me to produce close to 60 books so far, translations and authoring. And I have a website, islamlife.com. I have a YouTube channel. I just wanted to introduce myself so that I can talk to you about Palestine. I have prepared some notes. Inshallah, Allah willing, we'll start. The paternal cousin of Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the messenger of Islam, stated that between Noah and Adam, there were 10 centuries, all of them on the religion of truth, meaning they believed Allah is one, the one and creator of everything and everyone, and that he's the only one who deserves to be worshipped. Then the division appeared on earth, and from the time of Noah until the time of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Allah sent a large number of prophets and messengers. Why I mentioned Noah is because, so Noah is Noah. One of my books that Allah blessed me to author in 300 pages, this is right after 9/11, Holy Wars, Crusades, Jihad, page 68 to 69. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it talks about some of the story of Noah alayhi salam. Alayhi salam means Allah's blessings on him. The 9th chapter in Genesis speak about a story where Noah, a prophet from Allah, God, drank wine, became drunk, and became naked. He took off his clothes. So one of his children came and saw his nakedness. It has to be Ham, of course. and Shem, Sam, Semitic, Samiyin, the father of the Semitic people, including the Arabs, uh, and his brother Japheth or Japheth covered the nakedness of Noah. So this is a slander against Prophet Noah. The prophets of Allah would never do something like that. But the strange thing is that verse number 25, when he was told about what happened from his son Ham, Ham, and he said, "Cursed be Canaan, C N, sorry, Canaan, 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 Canaan." And he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brothers." So the funny thing is that there was no Canaan, wasn't born during the time of Adam or Noah. There was no person called Canaan, came much later. So why would he say, "Cursed be Canaan"? We'll talk about it a little later, but this is really strange. First of all, Canaan didn't do anything. You want to curse somebody, curse the son who did not cover the nakedness of his father, like his brothers. We are told they went backward and threw something on their father, the prophet, so he can continue in his drunkenness and then wake up later, maybe, and tell them about the revelation from God. Of course, this is a false story. That didn't happen. And the fact that people read this and don't question, it's a strange thing by itself. So he cursed Canaan. Who's Canaan? He wasn't there, didn't do anything. So they cursed the son of the sons of the sons, maybe great grandson, for the mistake, claimed mistake of Ham. And it has to be Shem, who is the master. And from there you have Ham, uh, the father of Canaan, according to the statement, and their children, they will be the servants for the masters. Does this click here about Semites? Semites. Okay, we'll talk about it. On page 71 in the same book, Holy Wars, Crusades, Jihad, we read this. Azra, which is chapter 9, 1 and 2, we read this. Now, when these things were done, the princes came to me, saying, "The people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands, doing according to their abominations, even of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Jebusites." So the Canaan people were in Palestine, according to the book that the Christians and Jews say it's the revelation from God. The Canaanites, during the time of Israel, the Canaanites, Canaanis, let me make it easier for me, Canaan people, they were in Palestine already. It's in the Ezra chapter of the Old Testament, chapter 9, and verses are 1 and 2. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but um, Canaanites were in the land, being, the people of the land, and then Israel was commanded to do something. I'm not going to talk about this, but Canaanites are found in the ancient books of the Christians and Jews as the people of the land. About the history of Palestine, it is said, and historical evidence is not always precise, almost always not precise. But they say that the history of Palestine goes back about 9,500 years. Uh, Between 7,500 and 3,100, before the Christian era, uh, there were people who live in the area that we call Palestine today. We are told that the city of Jericho, Ariha, was built during that time. And this is why historians say that Jericho is the oldest city or town built on earth. We don't know, but I'm just reporting what they say. Now, the Canaani people immigrated to historical Palestine uh, about 3,000 years before the Christian era, about 5,000 years ago. So they are the ones who came in mass as a people, and they settled in Palestine. Now, the area was called Canaan, and the Old Testament agrees to that, uh, until some invaders from Crete, which is in Greece, came and took over the um, the coastal areas of Palestine of today. So the Canaanites, the Canaan people, the children of the sun who didn't do anything but was cursed by Noah, they settled in that area. After their settlement, and it's clear from the Old Testament, uh, Prophet Ibrahim came to Palestine from Iraq of today. They called Or. We don't know if he came from Or, but that's what historical claims are saying. So Abraham, the prophet who is respected by Christianity, Islam, Judaism, came to Palestine. By that time, the Canaani people were the inhabitants of the land, and also they were the rulers of the land. So Palestine was a Canaani area, and Ibrahim alayhi salam came, and we know that Ibrahim alayhi salam, Allah's blessings on him, his son is Isaac, Ishaq, whose son is Yaqub, Jacob, Israel. That's the name of the grandson of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So you have the Canaanites, they were in the land. Abraham came from Iraq and settled in Palestine, and then Isaac came and Jacob came. These are things that are accepted in history. Ibrahim came from Or, we don't know. Abraham was an Arabi, an Arab. He was from the Arab people who inhabited the area he was from in Iraq of today. So he was an Arab. In fact, the paternal cousin of the Prophet, Abdullah ibn Abbas, I just mentioned him in the beginning, said that Abraham is the father of the Arabs. He is the father of the Arabs. He was an Arab, and he came from an area populated by Arabs in Iraq. Now, during the time before and after Abraham, there were all kinds of conflicts in that area, and like the invaders from Crete, which is the largest island in Greece, came and settled. They mixed with the Canaanites, and the Canaanites became the dominant race in Palestine because those Crete people, they mixed with the Canaanites. The Canaanites were the original inhabitants, larger in number, and they became the dominant race in Palestine. And the Canaanites are Arabs. the Canaanites. See? I'm going to show you the page if you can see it. The Canaanites are Arabs who populated Palestine before Abraham alayhi salam came. It is very important for us to mention here. Of course, the area came through the era of the prophets, Dawood, David alayhi salam, Sulaiman, Solomon alayhi salam. Also, the Ashuri kingdom and the Kaldani kingdom, they took over the Jewish state in Palestine. The Jewish state in Palestine lasted for about 4 centuries, full of conflicts and instability. So, after the kingdom of David and Sulaiman alayhim salam, prophets from Allah, Muslims believe in them, and in Abraham, and in Isaac, and in Israel, Yaqub, that they came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, these people, the Ashuris and the Kaldanis, they overwhelmed Palestine, and the state of the Jews was destroyed during their time. Then the Persians attacked Palestine, invaded, and for 2 centuries, the area of Palestine was ruled by Persia. Persia was a major power in the world until Alexander, they call him the Great. He wasn't great, but Alexander invaded Palestine, and until the Alexander state or whatever it is that collapsed after 2 centuries from the time of Alexander. Also, in the meantime, Palestine had so many conflicts and invaders, and people settling there, people living there. For example, there was the Maccabees state and the Anbat, the Nepotes. I don't know what they call them. The Anbat. If you go to Jordan, visit there, there is that city that they left, Petra. It's famous among the tourists. Petra was the capital of the Anbat, who were Arab people, and they controlled Palestine for a number of years and decades. Then the Romans came, and the Romans made Palestine a province of Rome, and then until the middle of the 7th century, when Muslims came and freed Palestine from the rule of the oppressive Roman Europeans. And during the time the Romans were there, Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, the Prophet of Allah, was born. And the story of Isa is propagated, and there are, of course, errors in the claims about Isa. He wasn't the son of God. He was just a prophet, and he called his people the Israelites, to whom he was sent to come back to the religion, because they had by then committed so many sins that Allah punished them time after time after time. Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, suffered greatly by the hand of the Jews who were in Palestine during that time. But they were ruled by the Romans. The Romans did not seem to have any decision to make about Jesus in the beginning, until the Jews started telling them he's gonna become independent. He calls himself King of the Jews. He wasn't a king at all. And then they tried to drag the Romans into the conflict, and they succeeded. According to the New Testament, the Romans crucified Jesus. On the way to be crucified, and this is in the New Testament, Jesus was smacked on the back of his neck by the Romans, and the Jews spat on him. They were spitting until he was taken close to the area of the crucifixion. He was stripped naked, and they made him wear a woman's dress. It's in the New Testament. So the Romans did this, and to appease the Jews. However, the Jews, according to the Romans, of course, were troublemakers, rising up here and there and here and there until the Romans got fed up. And I want you to remember the year I'm going to mention. The year 70 in the current era, Christian era, 70. The Romans expelled the Jews from Palestine. They're not there anymore. However, who remained in Palestine during that time? The Canaanites and other peoples who immigrated and mixed with the Canaanites, the Arabs. The Jews were out. That's the year 70. And the year 70 is very important because the Romans threw out the Jews from Palestine. They scattered all over the world in the beginning, all over the Roman Empire, and then they were found in many other areas. So the Jews were expelled from Palestine the year 70. Now, in the beginning of the Islamic era, in the middle of the 7th Christian century, the Muslims, the Arabs invaded, opened, conquered, whatever the word you want to use. They brought Palestine to the Arab nation. Now that has become a Muslim. Since then, the area of Palestine was an Arab Muslim until today. We still have millions of Arab Muslims in Palestine. Now, I'm going to go quickly through this. You have the Battle of Yarmouk, which is a city also in Jordan, when the Muslim army defeated the Roman army of 200,000 people, and the Muslim army was 30,000. They defeated them, and then Palestine became an Islamic land since then. And from Arabia, many Arab tribes came to Palestine, to Egypt, to North Africa, and they resided in those areas. From Arabia, throughout Arabia, the tribes went, they stayed in Palestine, they went to Egypt, North Africa. So the number of Arabs became even more and more, and became an Islamic area under the Muslims. And the Arabs were Muslims, and the Arabs are the original inhabitants of Palestine. Now, you have a few other notes here. I'm going to try to skip some of them. Now, later, by the end of the 11th century, the Crusaders came. The Crusaders came and they took over Sham, Syria area, including Palestine. The Crusaders came from Europe, and they were incited by the popes who were telling them, our land, the Holy Land, the land of Jesus, under the pagans. The Muslims now became pagans, but those who worship three gods were not pagans. So they went there with such fanaticism that when they finally took over Al-Quds, Jerusalem, they exterminated everybody there, Christian and Muslim. They went to churches, they killed everybody there. I mentioned in my book, Holy Wars, Crusades, Jihad, about some of the incidents who were reported by Christian historians. One of them said, and this is striking, they said when the Christians came and killed everybody, including in the churches, and they stole whatever the churches had. It wasn't for Jesus or anything. It was really bloody. The streets became red because of the blood of the people they killed, until he said, this person said, this is why in the East they had this idea since then that that the Europeans have no faith. They don't believe in anything. This is a Christian man who said it. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, the Sultan of Egypt and uh, the great warrior and mujahid, defeated the entire combined forces of Europe and kicked out the Crusaders. Not all at the same time, but he took back Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and they were defeated until they left the area completely. In the Western culture, there is a lot of uh, confusion about Salahuddin. His name is Salahuddin. Salah, the becoming righteous, becoming good. I mean, I'm just trying to explain to you ad-din, the religion, meaning that this man is helping the religion to become dominant. This is the name. This is the meaning of the name. In Western culture, his name is Saladin. It's like some kind of salad. He wasn't a salad. He was a warrior, and he defeated the entire combined armies of Europe and brought back Palestine to the Muslims. After that, from the history, we know about the Battle of Ain Jalut. Ain Jalut is when the Muslims of Palestine, Egypt, and Syria finally defeated the Mongols. They tried to come and attack Palestine. They were defeated in the Battle of Ain Jalut by the Egyptian or the king of Egypt, Qutuz. May Allah give him his mercy, because he stopped now the fallacy that the Mongols were undefeated and can't be defeated. He defeated them decisively. In the year 1516, the Uthmanis, for some reason they call them the Ottomans. No Ottomans, they're Uthmanis. Defeated the rulers of Egypt and Syria, Sham meaning Greater Syria area, defeated them at the Battle of Marj Dabiq. And for centuries after that, about 4 centuries, the Uthmanis, not the Ottomans, the Uthmanis were the rulers of Palestine. Now, remember the year 70? Keep it in mind. The year 70 is when the Romans, 71, the Romans kicked the Jews out of Palestine. In the year 1838, Muhammad Ali, who was the ruler of Egypt, wanted to control the area, but after 10 years he had to leave. And then we have Herzl, Theodor Herzl, an Austrian journalist who convened the first Zionist Congress at Basel, Switzerland. And this is in 1897. Which drew up the Basel program of the movement, stating that Zionism strives to create for the Jewish people a home in Palestine secured by public law. What does this mean? 2 things. Until then, the Jews were not able to go back to Palestine from the year which? 70. Until 1897, when the Zionist movement started, And by the way, not all Jews are Zionists. Many of them, they hate the Zionist movement. Anyway, that's not the point at this time. Maybe a little later. So Herzl convened the first Zionist Congress, and they were calling for a homeland in Palestine, which means what? That it was in their homeland. You see, you don't call for a homeland somewhere unless you're not in that homeland at the moment. And they weren't there for about uh, since 70 to 1897. You can count, but that's not when they started coming, by the way. The Uthmani, the Ottoman, uh, Khilafah, or the rulers of the area, the major Muslim state, in the beginning of the 20th century and for some time before that, they were very weak. They were very weak. And even though they were weak, they needed money, they had debts to European countries. They refused that the debts be paid during the Khilafah, the rule of Abdul Hamid. They refused to give Palestine to the Jews. Even when they told them, we'll cancel the debt, he said, no, thank you, it's not going to happen. So when the Uthmani government refused, Herzl found support in Great Britain. This is important. In 1903, the British government offered 6,000 square miles of Uganda to the Jews. And they discussed it and they said, okay, we're not going to Uganda, let's go to Palestine because this is our homeland. We didn't live there for since 70, after the claimed birth of Christ, but hey, it's our homeland. They wanted to go back there. Now, in 1917, November the 2nd, this is a date that the Palestinian people like me remember. We were taught about it since we were young. The Lord of Britain, Balfour, who was the secretary, the British Foreign Secretary in 1917, made a statement of British support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. So by now, they didn't have any presence whatsoever in Palestine, except for the few or the number of Arab Jews who lived in peace in Palestine. But other than that, they had no presence there. So Balfour and the British started this conflict more than 100 years ago. It didn't start 2 weeks ago, 100 years ago, by this war criminal of a massive, massive scale. He gave a land that never belonged to him or to the British Empire and promised it to the Jews who were not even in that area whatsoever, never been there since the year 70. And he said, "Oh, we're going to establish a national homeland for you. What about the Palestinians?" What Palestinians? They still say that, by the way. So the British Foreign Secretary, Balfour, made the declaration. It's called Balfour Declaration, Balfour Declaration. Look it up. In the year 1917, the British took over the area of Palestine. They defeated the Turkish forces, and then Palestine became under their control, and they continued until 1948, when the State of Israel was established after the UN. Yeah, the same UN who keeps telling Israel, do this, do that. And they said, we're not listening. But they started their state by saying the UN gave us this land according to resolution number 181 in 1947. And That resolution caused the expulsion of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their land on which they lived before the Old Testament. And the Old Testament testifies to that. I mean, they call it the Old Testament. Okay. It testifies to the presence of the Arab Canaanites in Palestine, which was called Palestine during that time also. Now, since 1947, uh, we have the history that we're going to mention here. Before that, the Jews started coming from Europe in numbers, big and small, and that's in the early 20th century. After a 19, after more than 18 centuries of not being present there, they started coming and established their presence. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested the Muslims for being weak and divided, that they did not come to the aid of Palestine from the beginning. After all, the countries surrounding Palestine from all directions were under European, Western European occupation, and therefore they couldn't really help. So the Jews started coming until they established their homeland in Palestine, 1947, November 1947. Before that, they were coming. Even in the early part of their coming to Palestine, the Palestinians welcomed them because Muslims, they are the most generous people. These people were oppressed in Europe. They came, and okay, and some of them, many of them actually had a Palestinian passport. Some older Jews used to show their children, there was a state of Palestine. The passport says the state of Palestine, and they had Palestinian passports, which means those Palestinians were generous, naive, but generous, because Muslims are the most generous people, as I said. Welcome, stay with us, live. They didn't realize that it was one person, one family, 1,000, 10,000, until during the, like I have a number here. Okay. In March 1925, the Jewish population in Palestine was officially estimated at 100,000 Jews. It was about less than 1/5 of the population in Palestine. About 1/5. The number rose to 238,000 by 1933, 20% of the population. So even in 1933, the population of the Jewish people in Palestine was about 20% of the total population, which means 80% were Arab, Muslim, Palestinians, and Christians too. So 1947, the State of Israel was created, and they started attacking. You see what the British did? They looked the other way, in every other way, and allowed the Jews to come, oppress the people of Palestine, hundreds of thousands of them. They allowed them to amass weapons that the Palestinians couldn't have because they were under the brutal British occupation, and they allowed them. And they allowed them to increase in number, weapons, money, especially after 1945. Sorry, I don't have a cold. Anyway, so until 1945, the Jews were coming in large numbers to establish really a state within the state. 1947, the United Nations made this resolution. 1948, we have the first war between the Arabs, the British occupied Egypt, The British occupied Jordan and the British occupied Iraq. They went into Palestine to free the Palestinians. They had defective weapons. They were occupied themselves, so it failed. Now, from 1948 until 1967, the Jews controlled most of Palestine. Even though the United Nations resolution gave them a part, they took almost all. And they took so much land and uh, killed so many Palestinians to give that, sense of fear that they would leave even before the Jews came. And hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were violently expelled from Palestine. They had to go to other areas, to the West Bank, to Lebanon, to the south. Hundreds of thousands. They were living there since before the Bible was written by the Jews. They were living there. And they continued to live there until the Jews came and kicked them out. This is our homeland. Here is the title. Look, it's signed by Abraham. We are the children of Abraham. And they kicked out hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. And they did so much killing, destruction, theft of land, farms, and homes to rival anything that the Jews are doing now. They did more there. Look up the name Deir Yassin, Deir Yassin, Yasin. It was a massacre. The Jews massacred every man, woman, and child in that town. I think there are still some pictures, by the way, if you can find them on the internet. But they killed every man, woman, child, and suckling an infant in that city and caused a lot of fear among the Palestinians. No weapons to defend themselves. The British gave them everything they needed so that Balfour, who was dead by then, can make his promise a reality. And the Palestinians were helpless. They couldn't defend themselves. The Arabs came in 1948, they couldn't help them. And the Jews, the way they did what they did is that they either go to a town, kick everybody out, say this is ours. They kill people in some towns, so people, uh, leave that area and they come and occupy. They stole land, they stole lives, they destroyed a large part of Palestine by taking it from the true owners of the land and making their homeland on it. Now, the Holocaust. So before I go to 1967, the Holocaust. You see, the Secretary of State, Blinken, went to Israel after the Hamas incident, the attack by Hamas, and he said, I'm coming here as both a Secretary of State and a Jew. He mentioned his grandparents suffered through the pogroms. You know what the pogroms are? In the Russian Empire, they started great oppression of the Jews to force many Jews to go to other areas in Europe. So he's talking about the pogroms. His grandparents. He said his stepfather died during the Holocaust. And of course, the number of dead Jews in the Holocaust has to be 6 million, not 5,999,999. It has to be 6 million. Otherwise, in some European countries like France, they could actually put you in jail if you say the Holocaust didn't happen. It did happen. I wrote about this for decades, that the Holocaust did happen, The number 6 million, I don't know where they got it from. Also, the Germans and those who supported their effort to exterminate the Jews, France, Italy, Romania, Poland before it was invaded, and the Pope during the time of Hitler, who I have the picture on my website, on my Facebook, by the way. Uh, the Pope accepted Hitler there, and they looked the real nice other way, because according to the Christian religion, uh, these are the people who killed their God, Jesus. So they wanted to pay back the Jews. And until the pogroms throughout the history of the Jews in Europe, they killed them, they oppressed them, they mistreated them. No, no, no. They humiliated them, they degraded them, they treated them as subhuman. And if you read the history, you will be amazed at how Europeans treated the Jews because you killed our God. Hitler, by the way, and I have it in my book, The Holy Wars Jihad, Crusades Jihad. I have it there. Hitler was justifying what he was doing to the Jews by saying that Jesus suffered greatly under, the Jews and this and that, and he's like talking like a sheikh, giving a lecture from the New Testament about the plight of Jesus that was caused by the Jews. Now, the Holocaust did not target only the Jews, the Slavs, the Germans who had defect, you look like Aryan, go to the concentration camps, and the local people. The Russians, by the way, lost 25 million people during the war, Second World War, which Trump says that it didn't start yet, but it did start. They killed 25 million Russians. So the death and destruction that the Germans started was not only directed at the Jews. They killed so many Muslims in North Africa when Mussolini thought he can control North Africa. Then he had to beg Hitler for help. So this is the Holocaust. And Blinken, like so many Jews, since they went back to Palestine after an absence of 1800 plus years, they're saying the Holocaust, we were killed in Europe, we were killed, the Nazis. Blinken says about the pogroms that started in Russia, and POGROMS. He says his grandparents. But hey, it's not the Palestinians who did it. It's not the Muslims. It's not the Arabs. So those people in Europe killed your people, and they did. You come steal my land, had nothing to do with it. The Palestinians had no part in the Holocaust. So to compensate the remaining Jews whom Hitler and his people did not help, they did not allow to live, millions of them remained. And those people now started targeting Palestine and America with immigration. They came here, it's a huge land. But the Europeans did not give them a part of Germany, a part of France, Italy. They gave them my land. I had nothing to do with it. In fact, Hitler committed suicide 14 years before I was born. Yet my land has been stolen from me and my family and the Palestinians and the Muslims and Christians in Palestine based on what happened to them somewhere else. This is incredible. And nobody there said to Blinken, blink. What's wrong with you? The Russians did this to your grandparents, the Germans, and you're here. You're not in Germany. You're not in Italy. You're not in Russia. You're in Palestine. Had nothing to do with it. This is very important that I wanted to mention, because the Jews justify their killing of the Palestinians, destroying their land, taking over their homes. Somebody would go out of their home in the morning to go work. If they can find work, they come back, find settlers living in their land. Ah, this is my land now. This is my home. Uh, can you believe this? Can you stand yourself? You who you're listening to me now, those among you who are listening to me now, would you tolerate that? And if it happens because the West supported the Jews every way they could, weapons of destruction that the Arabs never had until today. Until today, the presidents of America consistently said that they wanted to give weapons to Israel to make it more powerful than all Arab states put together. And it's still, but it's not because of the genius of the Jews. It's because Europe and America stood behind them. For example, this is not the first war that Netanyahu starts against Gaza. 1 week, 2 weeks of shelling. You see the shelling of civilian areas. Thousands of men, women, children were killed. But they talk about Hamas and they forget about this and they forget about the 100 years before that, like Palestinians and Jews were okay, nice. How are you doing? Nice. And then Hamas started. Hamas, what was started in Palestine, none of the leaders of Hamas were born by that time. So they give them all these weapons and all this money coming from America. They take our taxes and by force, they send it. We had no option. We can't say no. No objection. We can't, object because our objection will not be accepted anyway. No objection from a good segment of the society and the media, 100% with the Jews. Well, you gave them all these tens of billions of dollars of weapons. How come within a few days, Netanyahu was begging Biden for more weapons and more money? What happened to all the money you got? I mean, you have all these weapons to defeat Egypt, if they could, and to defeat in 1967 Jordan, Syria, and Egypt at the same time. You can't use your magnificent factories and scientists to have enough shells and weapons to destroy Gaza. The destruction of Gaza, 1967. So from 1948, when the Arabs were defeated, until 1967, the Jews attacked. This is the original terrorist state. Don't talk about Hamas. 1967, the Jews suddenly, look it up, the Arab-Israeli War, 1967, in fact, the Jews, with all the weapons that made them much stronger than the Arabs, attacked suddenly, without a warning, Egypt. They took Gaza from Egypt, 1967. Jordan, they took the West Bank from Jordan, 1967. Syria, they took Golan Heights from Syria in 1967. Did you ever hear about that? This is the entire state attacking 3 different states around them. But it's Hamas. Hamas what? It started 100 years ago. And I wanted to let you know that whatever you think about the latest attack by Hamas, and they did start it is not in a vacuum. It started 100 years ago. The settlers. Let me talk about the settlers before I talk about 1973. The settlers are the most inhumane aspect of the Jewish state in Palestine that really devastated the Arab Muslims. They have no mercy in their heart. So many of them came from Brooklyn, here in New York. No ties to Palestine for centuries and centuries. It's not theirs. They have never been there. They don't own anything there. They just went there, started stealing lands in the West Bank, and the settlers, they go to the area, occupy it, they shoot, they kill. Even in this latest incident with Hamas, they still went to the West Bank and they killed so many of the Palestinians. They just shoot, and the army is standing there supporting them. But no, if the Palestinian children throw rocks at the Jews, they shoot them. They have so many children in Israeli jails, but who's talking about that? It's also only about Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Anyway, uh, 1973, what happened? Uh, in retaliation for 1967, the Egyptian and Syrian armies started the war without warning. The Jews did it before. And the Egyptians, in specific, taught the Jews a lesson that made the Jews so very eager to make peace with Egypt, because they knew that they couldn't, that Egypt is almost equal in strength to the Jews. However, Egypt was fighting America during 1973. Just like happened Netanyahu and those before him, uh, Golda Meir, Golda Meir, Golda Meir, we call it in Arabi, she called Nixon crying, Mr. President, if you don't support us, help us, Israel will vanish, will be destroyed. No more Israel. He said, oh, wow, weapons. I saw some American Christian pilots who said we participated in the bombing of Egypt from our bases in Europe. They were not even American, and Egypt couldn't fight all these people, especially since the Arabs are divided. So 1973. Since then, they made the peace. Gaza remained with the Jews and the West Bank, and the settlers continue their attack against the Palestinians everywhere they can. The war criminal G.W. Bush even said that the people who lost the most, who are humiliated on a daily basis, are the Palestinians. Netanyahu, he said, the people in the area who lost the most are the Palestinians. Can you believe it? And they're trying to erase us from the land. They say after the besiege blockade of Gaza again, started 2007, continued until now. It became so inhumane that even the European Union was saying these people need food, they need water, and they wouldn't allow the water and food to come in. So the European Union even criticized them for that. But several wars started after Hamas took over Gaza 2006, and the brutality is unbelievable. They killed thousands and thousands of men, women, and children. They bomb entire areas. They demolish homes like they do in the West Bank. And they go and just read the history of the settlers, what they do. It's unbelievable. So Gaza was under the Jews since 1967. They took all the Jews out of Gaza 2005. And because there were only like 3,000 among 2 million Palestinians. So this is not, they concentrated now on the West Bank. So many settlers there, so many settlements. I saw them with my own eyes. You see the settlement there, all these nice buildings, with our money from here and Europe. And the Palestinian land, they can't really work. They don't have hope in a future with peace. They're being killed. They're being killed every day. And then you come and talk about Hamas. Hamas didn't start it. The Brits did. It's the British. I have a video coming about the Prime Minister of Britain denouncing Hamas and offering full support to Israel in response to the terroristic attacks by Hamas. Really? You started it, man. You started it. You brought all this conflict to a people who didn't do you any wrong. You were stealing from that occupied land. Then you brought the Jews and devastated the people. And now you're telling me about terrorists? You are the original terrorists. And the Jews are the original terrorists of the area. There is no Middle East. This is a British name. This is Arab area. This is Palestine, Jordan, Al Urdun, Syria, Syria, Lebanon, Masr, Egypt. They terrorized all the people around them. And let me answer. I can't talk about everything. Just to give you an example, look at the devastation in Gaza and say to yourself, to your family, to your friends, the same treatment the Gaza people are getting now started 100 years ago. These people have been suffering all these years. And we're giving the Jews all kinds of weapons and money and support. And what did the Gaza people who died in the thousands do against Israel? Then Gaza is not Hamas. The West Bank is even less Hamas than Gaza. But they are killing thousands of Palestinians. Um, it's really pathetic to see the media here, the same media that kept instigating the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, which America lost very badly, lost trillions of dollars. They had to leave so much military equipment in Afghanistan, said goodbye to the people who supported them, and left just like they did in Vietnam. Uh, the same media, it's unbelievable. Why are you instigating all this hatred against the Arabs and Muslims? We didn't do you any wrong. It's just for a rating, you're doing this, or because the whole situation here, they won't allow you to talk about Palestine. Western Europe, they are not allowing supporters of Palestine to demonstrate. I don't like demonstrations to begin with, but look at that. So they're giving weapons for the Jews to kill, but they're not allowing the Palestinians to demonstrate against Israel. I heard that also in Canada. Uh, it's strange, isn't it? You're the ones, the Europeans, and America is a result of Europe. The people here came from Europe anyway. You're the ones who killed the Jews throughout the centuries, starting with the first crusade. By the way, didn't go all the way to Palestine. They started by killing the Jews in Hungary, I think. Anyway, you killed them. It's not us. We don't believe Jesus is the Lord and Savior, Son of God. You do. You believe the Jews killed your God. That's why you killed them over the years. Now, Hitler came, tried to exterminate as many as he could. Then whoever is left, you send them our way. No. The last thing I'm going to say is that Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, which literally means the farther or farthest masjid. Masjid is the Islamic place of worship. It's not mosque. It's not mosque or mosques, whatever it is. The origin of that word is still unknown. It's a masjid. Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa in Palestine, it's in the Quran. And it is announced in the Quran that Allah allowed his prophet to visit the Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. It's in the Quran. 2 billion Muslims on earth today, they read Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. All Muslims are the same with regards to the sanctity of their bloods, and everybody else too. Allah doesn't allow mischief or killing people without justification. But the Muslims have compassion for Palestine because of Al-Masjid, on top of the area being populated by Muslims, millions of them. So the Jews, I once, I was in a lecture, given a lecture one day to mainly Jewish people at a university, because that was, I forgot the topic. But anyway, I said to them, you're trusting the Christians? Can't you read in history how many times they tried to exterminate you? You're trusting the Christians? Don't trust the Christians, because they sent you. They sent those who they couldn't kill in Europe to Palestine to engage in a hopeless war against a sea of Arabs and Muslims who, even though today are weak, it's not going to be the same forever. So I told the Jews, I think you know who killed you more throughout history than any other community on the face of the earth. It's Europe. Now you're trusting them. They still believe you killed their God. So for Biden, a Catholic who believes in the Old Testament and the New Testament, according to what he says, he reads in his book that the Jews did, what to Jesus, and yet he's acting like he's in supporting. I don't like to make fun of people, but uh, I don't like Trump. I think he's an evil man without conscience. However, there is one description he gave to Biden: Sleepy Joe. He's up, he's awake, he's alert, and he's doing this. We're gonna do this and do that. You're sending, you're sending two aircraft carrier groups. Fight who? Who's gonna fight you? Iran is not gonna fight the Americans. You know that 1980 until today didn't fight the Americans. Lebanon, they're not gonna fight the Americans. So who? They're gonna finish off the Gaza people, whoever the Jews didn't kill yet. What kind of hypocrisy lives today is unbelievable. The worst of them is what I just mentioned in this class. I cannot say everything. I can't say a fraction of the suffering of my people and the Muslims in Palestine and the Christians by the hand of the Europeans who sent the Jews to us and keep supporting them with everything. The lifeline of the Jews is literally in the hand of Western Europe and America. The worst among the things that they mentioned is that the Holocaust. Well, go to Germany and take apart Lower Germany, the Saxon area, French area. Go take apart that because we didn't do it. Why am I being punished for what Europe did? Did I say this is the final thing? Oh, this is the final thing. Uh, the chancellor, the same title Hitler had, of Germany today, Olaf, whatever. He is condemning in the strongest words and terms the Hamas terrorists and this and that. Really? You tried to kill the Jews, and then you supported the Jews since 1945. You're the ones who tried to exterminate them, not us. And you're talking? You can't be serious. You're condemning us? Well, these people came because of you. And the chancellor who was, 1945 and before you. It came, you created this conflict. The Brits, the Germans, the French, look at the French now, so fanatical against the Palestinians. What for? We didn't do anything wrong to the French. They did wrong to us. And the French were defeated by the Algerians after the death of 1 million Muslims in Algeria, and they're just trying to pay back Muslims. Everywhere there's conflict, part of it, Muslims in Africa, they go and send their little armies here and there. Little armies, it's because of those countries being so weak that a little army from France comes and kills Muslims. So the Muslims are being pressured all over the world. They hear about Palestine, they cry for Palestine because it is our land. No way that we'll accept that Palestine belongs to the Jews. Also, there are Muslims are being killed in India, Muslims being killed in China or oppressed, and all over the world. So what does the world want? You're dealing with 2 billion people, and sooner or later they'll be able to pay back. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help our Muslim brothers and sisters in the West Bank, where 100 people were killed since the last 2 weeks. 100 people were killed after 250 Palestinians were killed before Hamas started including many from my family. Abualrub, Abualrub. They were killed in Jenin. I ask Allah to support our Muslim brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank, against the most brutal occupation in our time to rival the brutality of the French and Dutch occupations. And this is a lot to say. I mean, maybe they'll win. But look at what's happening. You're supporting the Jews with all these weapons and money, and then after a few days, oh, help us, we need more. Uh, no. Well, the Muslims in Europe and in America are in the millions, but the democratic governments there, they have no regard for the feelings and the needs of the Muslims whatsoever. So what do you expect? I don't know, but I ask Allah to help our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in the West Bank, in the rest of Palestine, and the rest of the Arab and Muslim world. I thank Allah in the beginning and the end for His favors. We have to be patient, and patience always pays. What should we do as Muslims? First of all, don't say as Muslims. What should we, the Muslims, do? Because as meaning, I don't know if you know that, but literally means that you're talking about the Muslims and you're as. But I know you're not saying that. Just a reminder. So we, the Muslims, what should we do? Those who live in Western countries, especially the little fascist democracies in Western Europe, make your voice heard. Uh, Demand that the government listens to the Muslims, respects the Muslims and their feelings, instead of selling out to the Jews whom they tried to kill only a few decades ago. Make your voice heard, object to what they're doing. In America, the same thing. Like, for example, some brothers and sisters are collecting the names of people who are running for Congress who are blindly for the Jews. Like, no eyes, it's just for the Jews, so that we or those people, make place ads in the media that this guy supported the Jews. Can you believe it that somebody in Congress who has a lot of problems with regard to being a Muslim, they forced her to, attack the Palestinians. Otherwise, they were saying that they're going to expel her from Congress. But the Congress is unbelievable. You left the business of the American people, the job problems, the crimes. Do you know that for decades now, between 20,000 to 30,000 people are murdered in America, the most violent society on the face of the earth? You know that percentage of people who are in jail in America is the largest in the whole world, including against China. So they left the business of the people here, and they want to go back, even though they're fighting. They want to go back and give a resolution, $106 billion to give to Ukraine, to the borders, and to the Jews. What about all the tens of billions that happened before? So make your voice heard, and this is important. Donate money, but through organizations that you trust will give the money to the needy, to those who really need it. Did you understand me well? Make sure you send it through an organization that are giving the people there the money, and invoke Allah for your Muslim brothers and sisters. Yeah, the organizations, they should be registered with governments. Uh, Like, for example, here we have a few of them here in America. In Europe, I'm not sure. In Kuwait, you have a number of Islamic organizations recognized by the government, and especially those in Kuwait. I grew up in Kuwait. I know they send the money, all the money, 100% to the Palestinians, because these are your Muslim brothers and sisters, and you, the Muslim, is a part of the Ummah of Muhammad. Okay. Why I made the distinction between the Uthmanis and the Ottomans? For a simple reason. Their name comes from Uthman, one of their ancestors, Uthman, who started, the ancestors of the Turkish tribes, Uthman, descendants Uthmanis. So it's an Arab name. It's not Ottoman. Ottoman is a European name, and they have a habit for a very, very long time to change the names of people or translate the names of people in other areas. I'll give you an example that is really clear. Isa, alayhi salam, Isa belonged to the Israeli people, the grandchildren of Abraham, the father of the Arabs. So Isa alayhi salam, his name is Isa. What's the name you hear all the time? Jesus, Jesus. Uh, that's not his name. That's not his name. Never was. Just as the name God was never used by anybody in the Old Testament and the New Testament. They call him Elohim, Allah. Now, which one rhymes with the other? Allah, Elohim, God. Jesus wasn't his name, and he didn't speak any European language. So where did this name come from? Same thing with the Ottomans, same thing with Palestine. It's Palestine. What happened to the Fa there? So they changed the names of entities. So their name is not Ottoman. Ottoman sounds like a German car or something, but the Uthmanis are the Turkish people, mighty Turkish people who started the last uh, great Islamic power. And it's a shame that the Muslims today are divided into tens and tens of countries. It's all temporary. Protesting is not a part of the Islamic way to respond to any issue that the protesters are trying to raise. It's not an Islamic way. And I support the cat, but I don't, I don't support uh, in any way or form protesting. It causes damage. It doesn't help. And just like the questioner said, these people are intent on helping the Jews because it took them centuries to find somewhere to kick the Jews out of Europe, and they're not going to give it up. They don't want the Jews back. So it doesn't help. What I meant to say is that even protesting, those European countries and Canada, as much as I know, are not allowing one part of the conflict to protest. Even that, uh, it doesn't mean that I support it. I don't. I don't think they ever brought any good for Muslims. Those protesting, usually, especially when in the last couple of years here, for 3 years, protesting become violent and all that stuff. I don't accept it. So I wasn't talking about it being a part of the Islamic way of responding to oppression against Muslims. I'm just saying that even protesting, they won't allow if it's coming from those who support the Palestinians. By the way, I heard that recently people were actually getting the sense and the numbers that a large number of Americans are sick of Israel, sick of the Jews, questioning why can't we fix our problems instead of sending all this money to the Jews. And I hope the number of these people increases. So the one who asked me about what we can do about Palestine, why don't you make, like I did here, points about Palestine and start propagating, promoting the cause of Palestine? For example, somebody comes and says the Holocaust, and the Holocaust was in Germany. They didn't take a part of Germany. I have no problem with that. So what I'm saying here, promote the correct ideas about the conflict in Palestine, and this is something that all Muslims can do. Just defend, and other than that, what can we do? Violence? Absolutely not. Especially the areas you live in, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. No, really operating instrument. ها؟ اه اه كلها بصوت عالي. What do you say about those who say that uh, Hamas is an instrument of Israel? I mean, this is enough from the question. Really, really, what did you eat this morning? I'm joking. I know you want me to speak about it, but I'm joking. So Hamas is an instrument of Israel. No, I don't support Hamas. By the way, I'm not shy to say that. I spoke against their practices for decades, literally. And I have in my books also mentioned the suicide missions and all that stuff, that is not an Islamic way of doing things. But to say that Hamas, they're Muslims. They're Muslims. I don't agree with their practices, policies, their affiliation with Iran. I reject it completely. They're Muslims. And there is no way that they had a meeting with Netanyahu and Netanyahu said, we would like you to do some suicide missions, so we can go back and attack Gaza. Then you do it again, we attack. And now, like 3 weeks ago, he told them, listen, Hamas, we'd like you to come and attack and kill 1,500 Israelis and Jews so that we can destroy Gaza this time. That's rubbish. Okay, this is a funny question. Like my Sheikh Imam Al Albani, the preeminent scholar of hadith in our time, it's my Sheikh. Uh, he said, leave Palestine to the Jews. That's a lie. That is a lie. You want me to spell it? Kaf the ba. I spelled it in Arabic. Kadib. A lie. It didn't happen. It was a trap by some people who are drowned in their sectarianism. Uh, you know, among Muslims, we have this kind of people. They said to Al Albani, and I have a close relationship with this story to tell you about it. I'm sure 100%. So they said, we live, in Palestine. The Jews are not allowing us to pray, not allowing us to work, not allowing our women to cover, not allowing us to practice the religion. What should we do? And he said, if this is the case, make hijrah, immigrate, until you come back with the invading Muslim armies. See? See this segment here? He didn't say leave the Palestine to the Jews until you come back with the invading Muslim armies, if this is the situation. And the man who was set up as a trap for Al-Albani said, leave Palestine? He said, well, Muhammad left Mecca, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Mecca is the best town in the world, and he left it in immigration. So if this is the case, then you should make immigration where you can practice the religion, which is a fatwa he gives the people, for example, in Algeria, because of the system they're going against Islam and Muslims. And in any other area, this is a known fatwa by the scholars. If there is an area where you cannot practice Islam, it is required by the words of Allah in the Quran and the practice of Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, to make hijrah from there. So that was the context. He didn't say leave Palestine to the Jews. So a magazine came, and sadly, it's one of my students who did that uh, in Texas, and they said that Al Albani said, give up Palestine to the Jews. What a liar! What a liar! And this man used to lead Muslims in the prayer. I told him to his face, this is a lie. Al Albani didn't say it. If Rasulullah, remember, if Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the last and final prophet and messenger from Allah, emigrated from the best town to Allah and the most beloved town to him personally, Mecca, because he couldn't establish Islam there. So this fatwa is good for all generations. But that person lied, because sadly enough, the Muslims in the area that was controlled since 1948, they call it the green line, I don't know, green or red or black, whatever. They call it that. These people are allowed to practice their religion. They have masajid. They, their women are covered. So he lied to Al-Albani. Al-Albani gave an answer according to the question. Find another one. This is not good. Find another one. Another one. Okay. I was reminded now of something I did not know. Actually, Al-Albani fought against the Jews in Palestine. Can you hear this and propagate it? Just like those people propagated that leave Palestine to the Jews. Really? You take a part of a whole conversation and say Al-Albani. Al-Albani fought the Jews in Palestine. I didn't know that. I love and respect him more than I love and respect any other human being. Um, him and Ibn Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, and the other scholars, I love and respect them more than I love other human beings. So now my respect for him has increased. Also, for those who say otherwise about Palestine, Imam Ibn Baz, the scholar of Sunnah in our time, said that about the conflict in Palestine, Arahu jihadan Islamiyya. I believe that this is an Islamic jihad. That's it. About the occupation in Palestine, what can the Ummah of Muslims do? That's what we've been calling the Muslims to do for decades, and the scholars for generations. Muslims need to come back to the religion fully, completely, with knowledge, because the only aspect that will unite all Muslims from China to all over the world is the Quran and Prophet Muhammad's Sunnah as he taught it to his companions. This is the only way for Muslims to unite. Without unity, each individual country will be weak, confronted by the combined forces of the West, including America. So they're weak because each individual country has weakness. Either they're poor or they're not advanced with regards to the industry or don't have enough armies, whatever. So the Muslims need to unite around the Quran and Sunnah so that they become feared again and mighty again. It happened before, it can happen now. Throughout the decades, I started calling to Islam in America, 1984, in public. I have seen so many Muslims willing and eager to do what I just said. And throughout the Muslim world, there are large numbers of Muslims who want to unite again. So this is number one. Number two, the Muslim countries that have the tanks, airplanes, and navies and armies, they're the ones who are responsible to fight and bring back Palestine. They're not doing it. Don't think that groups of people here and there can do what an entire army cannot do. So the solution was by some Muslim groups is to uh, attack civilians, rejected, some Muslims. Suicide, suicide missions, attacking civilians in churches, for example, like happened in Iraq. That's not an Islamic way. That's a rejected way in Islam, and it doesn't help. It brings more trouble for the Muslims. So for Palestine, it's a tough time. I really advise my people, the Palestinians, to be patient. Be patient because the Arabs are lining up to make peace with the Jews, and the whole world is against them. So basically, they can't do much. But let me say this, with all the power and strength that they gave the Jews from the beginning, they couldn't erase the Palestinians as a people. They couldn't erase the Islam in the hearts of the Palestinians. Even the Christians in Palestine are against the Jews. Many Jews in Palestine outside, they are against Israel. So we need to work hard. At this time, what can I say? What can I say? I mean, Muslim countries will definitely not fight the Jews, especially when Sleepy Joe sent two aircraft carriers uh, across from Gaza. What do you want to do with this? So I'm asking the brothers and sisters to first be a good Muslim, really, so that when you invoke Allah, Allah accepts your invocation. Help as much as you can and do not commit violence where you're staying because you can't do that. It's not an Islamic way to use violence in, for example, European countries or here. It's not allowed. We have so many other things to do, including consolidating our presence, making our voice heard, until the time we are able to change. But for now, if all these countries that have all these armies and air forces and stuff couldn't do much, what do you think the people of Gaza and Palestine are feeling today and are, experiencing? What? Brutality, inhumanity. I mean, these are words. Look at the images. So I hope the Muslims, especially the Muslim countries, realize that they can't repeat what the media here says, acting as if the conflict in Palestine started 2 weeks ago by Hamas. That is rubbish. That is rubbish. You don't want to fight the Jews, say we don't want to fight the Jews, but don't come and try to make it as if as if the conflict in Palestine started 2 weeks ago. I'm repeating it again and again because that's what the media here says, and some Muslims and Arabs forgot what happened to the Palestinians over a century of struggle and a century of suffering, humiliation, killing, destruction, theft, and they're still there. So to me, it's already a type of victory that we're not. Look, uh, Netanyahu and the Israeli government, they're equally criminals, war criminals. But you know what they're trying to do? Tell Gaza, we'll open a corridor for you to Egypt, until the conflict is finished. And the people of Gaza said, we heard this story before. We're not leaving. We're not leaving. Do whatever you want. We're not leaving. They heard that story before when some Arab countries in 1948 told the Palestinians, come, we're going to go soon and free Palestine. They've been sitting in those countries since then. So try your best to do whatever Allah, Islam, the Quran, the Sunnah allow you to do. And La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. We need to unite around the Quran and Sunnah, and Allah will help us. Okay, a question here about Al Qassam. They heard me say he was a Salafi, meaning he follows the way of the first generation or the first three generations in Islam, the Prophet and his companions, the next generation, and the next generation. We consider them as the best Muslim generations of all time. As-Salaf al-Salih, this is the term, the righteous predecessors of Muslims. So Al-Qassam, did he follow this or he was a Sufi, Qadiri, Jahmi, whatever it is? No, this man was a Salafi. He wrote a number of small books about the necessity of following the Quran and Sunnah. He was from Syria. He fought the British when they started allowing the Jews to come and occupy land that they never owned. And he was going demonstrations. I mean, he did that against the Sufis in his town. So Izzuddin al-Qassam was a Salafi. Don't listen to those who say otherwise. And this man died in a battle with the British, who lured him. Allah knows how that happened, but he was killed, and this is before the war of 1947, 48. He was a dozen of years before that. So he was a mujahid, and he followed the way of Salaf al-Salih. Okay, so is the West using the terms terrorists, whatever it is, to target Islam and Muslims? This is the last question, by the way. And I remind you, I couldn't talk about a fraction of what I need to talk about. You can't talk about a conflict of 100 years in an hour. I'm going to be coughing, sorry. You see, the word terrorism didn't start with the West. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah used a similar word to describe those who deviate from the true Islamic ways and methodology. But it has been used by the West to convince the people in the West that these people are criminals, they're terrorists, they kill people, to hide the fact that they are the terrorists. After all, the Holocaust happened in Western Europe, didn't have happen in Western Palestine at all. I guarantee you. And they couldn't kill all the Jews, so they threw them out to our side, hoping that one of the two sides will finish the other. Israel cannot finish 2 billion Muslims, so I don't know what the Jews are doing, what they're thinking. They are trusting the same people who tried to kill them. So the word terrorism started before the current, the few decades that we remember. Let me guess who. I'm going to put the thinking pose here. The Brits. It's the Brits in Palestine who started calling the Jewish leaders like Menachem Begin as terrorist, wanted terrorist. Menachem Begin, who became the prime minister of Israel after. Menachem Begin and other leaders who started establish the state of Israel were called terrorists by the British because they were attacking British people. They attacked the British occupation forces, uh, and then the British called them terrorists. So it seems to me that the West is using what they're doing uh, to describe the people who are suffering under them, who are trying to resist. Isn't it a joke that the Brits were calling the Muslims in the Indian Ocean and the Arab Sea terrorists? I mean, they didn't send, sorry, pirates. Who went all the way and started attacking Muslims and then called them pirates. It's the same thing here. It's psychological, the effect of it on the simple people here who don't think much beyond what they hear in the news. And they trust the media even though they know the media is has a contract with hypocrisy and lying, but they still believe in that. Anyway, so they listen to that, and then they think, those Palestinians just kill men, women, and children, and whatever. Hamas. So that they don't object to the governments in the West supporting the Jews in such a way that make you wonder, what did the Palestinians do to America, to Britain, to France, to Germany? We didn't do anything to these people. They're trying to exterminate us. And if anyone resists, they call them terrorists. So it is a title that the Western people have been giving for a long time to those who resist their occupation, their attacks. Uh, what can I say? The Brits called Menachem Begin a terrorist. A member of the Israeli army today was called a terrorist, even by some Jewish organizations. So they are the terrorists. They're the ones who came and started the whole conflict. And what can I say? So the word terror is to make the people in the West who don't have much information about the conflict believe that the Muslims and Arabs and Palestinians are terrorists. They kill men, women, and children. They kill civilians. They attack places of worship, etc. Okay, one of our young brothers is asking, can we make dua against Israel and invoke Allah against Israel? Do it everywhere. Do it whenever you remember. Invoke Allah against them. They are the most oppressive people on earth today. And even Carter, this man who didn't do much for the Palestinians when he was president, but now he's supporting the Palestinians, saying this is uh, worse than what South Africa did to the blacks there. Uh, so yes, invoke Allah, and I'll invoke Allah with you against the Jews, and Allah will help us. Remember what Allah said in the Quran: "In tansurullaha yansurkum." If you give victory to Allah, meaning to His religion, Allah will give you victory and aid. we need to do that. But invoking Allah against the Jews, do it. Do it. And thank you. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help our brothers and sisters in Palestine and to help all Muslims throughout the world and support them and give them aid. I specify the people of Gaza today. Look at the images and see the destruction and killing. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them mercy. Those who died among them, to send them to paradise. And the criminals who killed them, to go to where they deserve to be, in hellfire, for killing Muslims with this veracity and with this hatred. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the Muslims wake up and help their brothers and sisters in the land of Al-Quds, so that one day we take it back, maybe in our lifetime, even in the lifetime of our children, but we are promised that we'll take it back. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Muslims who died in Palestine, West Bank, and Gaza, give them His mercy, paradise, and those who live after the death of these thousands of Muslims there, to give them patience and to allow them to, inshallah ta'ala, stay and remain on the religion of Islam until the end. What can I say? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all aware of what's going on. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us righteous in creed, statement, and action. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.